are the licensed video game. Once a collection of underwhelming retellings of big screen blockbusters littered with haunting polygonal nightmares. Hagrid, that's you.
Come on inside, Harry. Wipe your feet now.
And aimless Atari attempts. Yes, E.T., that's you. We've seen an uptick in actually good adaptations in recent years, with the upcoming Terminator 2D No Fate looking like a promising attempt at turning James Cameron's classic into some enjoyable retro action. So we thought we'd pick out the best of the bunch. We do have a few little rules though, that stop just any old film adjacent game from making the list. They need to either be a direct translation or adaptation of a feature film, an official movie sequel or prequel, or a game that attempts to continue the story or provide backstory and additional canonical lore. So, for example, Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man is not eligible as it takes place in a Marvel universe separate from the movies, and is much more rooted in the original comic books. But the PS2 Spider-Man 2 would be allowed due to it being directly based on the Sam Raimi film of the same name.
Hang on!
Makes sense? I hope so. Let's rank the top 10 best licensed games based on movies. Console launch games come with the power to stun thanks to the leap in technology they inherently are unlocked by. The Xbox 360's Peter Jackson's King Kong definitely benefited from this, as the Lord of the Rings director's epic retelling of the classic monster movie made a huge splash at the dawn of gaming's HD era. With Rayman and Beyond Good and Evil creator Michel Ancel helming it at Ubisoft Montpellier, King Kong felt more than a standard movie tie-in thanks to its many interesting and novel ideas. You had the freedom to explore its vast jungle spaces, which offered an unprecedented sense of cinematic immersion and was a breathtaking contrast against the previous generation's more limiting corridor-like spaces. King Kong not only ushered in a whole new generation of hardware, but also a new way of thinking about how licensed games could be approached. Scarface The World Is Yours has balls. Not only does a balls meter fill up as Tony Montana causes mayhem across an open world 80s Miami, allowing him to slow down time, enter first person mode, and gain infinite ammo as he guns down as many gang rivals as possible, but it also has an audacity to position itself as a sequel to a film in which its protagonist dies at the end.
Say hello to my little friend!
In this alternative universe, Al Pacino's anti-hero Coke Fiend survives the ambush at his mansion thanks to a certain little friend and escapes out the back door, free to continue building his drug-running empire. Yes, it's largely a GTA clone, as was commonplace in the era. See the also quite good Godfather adaptation for further evidence, but its wild concept alone is enough for it to deserve a place on this list. In terms of creating immersive worlds and capturing a tone, not many do it quite like Rockstar. The Warriors comes from an era when we'd get more than one game a decade from the developer, and sometimes multiple in 1 year. A much smaller scale project than the likes of GTA San Andreas or Vice City, The Warriors acts as both a prequel and a retelling of the cult 70s thriller of the same name, focusing on the titular New York gang. Taking the form of a beat-em-up, it successfully drenches you in the seedy underworld alleyways that its characters inhabit, as Rockstar once again displayed their world-class world-building credentials. And that grimy tone is what The Warriors achieves most successfully, making it an adaptation that shouldn't be overlooked, even when compared to the Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption Studios' other headline-stealing projects.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Now we're going to take a little break from the list here because it would be remiss of us to talk about the best movie video games without mentioning the many poor attempts that have been made over the years. From swiftly made cash-ins to utterly bizarre representations of their source material, there is no shortage of choices to pick from. Of course, one of the most famous of these, as well as being a genuine contender for the worst game of all time, is Atari's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, a game that somehow managed to boil down Steven Spielberg's masterpiece about a boy coming to terms with his parents' divorce through befriending an alien, to hunting down 3 parts of a telephone over multiple lifeless screens. It performed so badly that Atari infamously buried over 700,000 copies of it in the desert.
We found an intact ET the video game.
They were, of course, uncovered decades later in an effort to prove this wasn't just an absurd urban myth.
And that was the beginning of 30 years of speculation, legend, aura, and ultimately heavy digging equipment.
Then there's Fight Club, a game which not only completely neglects the message of David Fincher's cautionary tale of capitalism and toxic masculinity by reducing it to a simple fighting game, but also bafflingly includes Fred Durst as an unlockable character. And then there's Bad Boys Miami Takedown for the PS2, which is as dumb a third-person shooter as you'll find, devoid of any of the charm Will Smith or Martin Lawrence gave to those films, with some of the worst replacement voice actors you'll ever hear.
Tell me these punks are looking to broaden their portfolio.
Thought you had to be able to write to have a bank account.
Honestly, I could carry on listing these all day, but I have better things to do and many more fun games to think about. Back to the list now at number 7, and we've got Avalanche Studios' Mad Max. It's the perfect example of taking the essence of a film series and turning that into the driving force behind a video game adaptation. In this case, it's the exhilarating car combat witnessed all the way back in the original 1979 movie, through Road Warrior and into Fury Road's landmark action. When Max is on foot in the 2015 game, it's perfectly good as it apes the successful melee formula concocted by Warner Bros. Stablemate Rocksteady for its Batman Arkham series. But it's when the Australian drifter gets those hands out of Raider's jawbones and behind the wheel of his iconic Interceptor that it really comes to life. Now a cult favourite, much like the original film that inspires it, Mad Max is one of a kind, and a fantastic translation of George Miller's vision in video game form. Years before the Rocksteady Batman Arkham and Insomniac Marvel Spider-Man games, the prospect of a successful comic book game was bleak. Even rarer was the thought of a genuinely fun movie tie-in.
Go get him, Tiger.
Treyarch's Spider-Man 2, based on the Sam Raimi film of the same name, flew in the face of both of those ideas. An incredibly detailed New York City, for the time at least, felt like a revelation to swing around in. And Peter Parker's web-slinging provided a whole new way to explore the sort of 3D open world that the PS2's Grand Theft Auto games had pioneered. In a legitimately impressive technical revelation, Treyarch Spidey actually attached his webs to buildings rather than empty skyboxes. Flying between skyscrapers and thumping petty criminals was a thrilling sensation back in 2004. And while it has since been far eclipsed by more modern Peter Parker and Miles Morales adventures, it certainly paved the way for those to exist.
With great power comes great responsibility.
It's difficult to think of a movie series that's had more games to its name than Star Wars. Classics such as TIE Fighter and Rogue Leader were contenders for this pick, but we just think there's nothing like the fulfillment of the Force fantasy that is delivered by Respawn's Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Bridging the gap between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, this 2023 action-adventure is part of the official canon, with references to Order 66 and clashes with Darth Vader fueling Cal Kestis' story, with an originality that doesn't just lean on Star Wars cliches. An improvement in pretty much every way over its predecessor Fallen Order, it's an easy pick for our representative of the most famous of film universes. It may not be the best to play now, but there's just no denying the impact that GoldenEye 007 had when it arrived in 1997 on the Nintendo 64. Perfect Dark shortly after would go on to expand on the ideas established in its campaign, and games like Timesplitters would borrow from its revolutionary approach to FPS multiplayer, making it so much more than just a movie adaptation. Yes, it featured a whole host of famous James Bond heroes and villains, including a truly broken Oddjob who takes the term sharply dressed to its extreme, and successfully captured the globe-trotting exploits of 007 as much as a console with the limited power of the N64 could at the time. But it also shaped the next 3 decades of online shooters. This makes it so much more than just a movie tie-in, and something developer Rare should never be forgotten for achieving. One more small break from the list here to say that very occasionally we do get those games that actually manage to be better than the films they're based on. In fact, we have a few on this list. The Warriors, GoldenEye, and the one coming up next could all lay claim to this, but there is one in particular that didn't quite crack our top 10, which we'd still love to shout out. 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine. It was a truly dreadful superhero movie, one which showcased Hugh Jackman's worst rendition of Wolverine yet, and Ryan Reynolds' horribly misguided and tone-deaf first attempt at portraying Deadpool, years before the pair were reunited to greater success in 2024. Not much love remains for that film, but this particular Wolverine game features the best playable Logan yet, until Insomniac's attempt to take that crown later in 2026 that is, as he leaps, slashes and decapitates with all the ferocity you'd want from an adamantium clawed loose cannon. It's by no means a masterpiece, but for a short period of time before the Batman Arkham games arrived, it was as enjoyable a slice of superhero action as we'd gotten in a while, and 10 times more fun than the movie it was based on.
Take a message to your boss.
You might want to be careful with that, Johns. You could hurt somebody.
Heading into the top 3 now, and a video game prequel to the 2000 Vin Diesel vehicle Pitch Black has no right to be as good as the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay.
It ain't the fall that gets you.
Yet, here we are. Taking a heap of Half-Life campaign design and a healthy dose of Thief-like stealth, the Swedish Starbreeze Studios and Vin Diesel's own Tagon Studios transformed a perfectly decent film series into a genuinely great video game, and one that many believe surpasses its source material. Its smart level design is enhanced by intelligent translations of Riddick's abilities from the film, such as his trademark eye shine, which lets you see in the dark, and a healthy amount of improvised blunt and sharp weaponry that fits perfectly with the movie's grimy aesthetic. The plot's premise, a prison escape, is fundamentally cinematic, but it's the ways in which Butcher Bay asks you to play intelligently in its world that pushes it beyond the big screen and into a truly great game.
Let's play. Who's the better killer?
The original Alien film from 1979 is a haunted house movie in space, with lone survivor of the Nostromo, Ripley, aiming to survive its dark corridors and the roaming xenomorph threat until the credits hit. As such, it would become a natural inspiration for many survival horror greats, from Dead Space's infested spaceship to Soma's unnerving futurism, and of course Resident Evil 2's stalking Mr. X threat. So, naturally, when the time came for yet another Alien game to be made, survival horror seemed a logical choice for developer Creative Assembly, who would be the next in a long line to take up the challenge of translating the unique atmosphere of Ridley Scott's original film. What the studio made was beyond what could have been expected, as it evolved the idea of Resident Evil 2's Tyrant into an ever-present danger that scuttled along the map's sprawling web of vents. The xenomorph and the tech powering it are the jewel at the centre of Isolation's crown, and is what makes it such a faithful recreation of Alien. By stepping into her daughter's shoes and sneaking around the Sevastopol, you get as close a feeling as to what it would have been like to be Ripley and walk those Nostromo hallways yourself. It may not quite make the number 1 spot on our list, but it is the entry that most successfully captures the overall tone of its source material, embracing its terror to astonishing effect. We wouldn't have the likes of Tomb Raider or Uncharted without Indiana Jones, and in 2024, the king came back to claim his throne. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle took everything that made the original trilogy of Spielberg films so special, and managed to translate it into a lovingly designed video game from Wolfenstein developer Machine Games. Perhaps not so coincidentally, a studio formed by former Escape from Butcher Bay developers. Not only is The Great Circle a fantastic stealthy puzzle-filled action-adventure that really places an emphasis on the adventure part, but it borrows all of the archaeological intrigue and, crucially, humour that makes the likes of Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade so special. So much, in fact, that the story told here would slot nicely in between them and act as a superior third act of that trilogy than the Temple of Doom ever did. Throw in a fantastic pitch-perfect Harrison Ford impression from Troy Baker,
Game reveals the secret
A suitably swarmy performance from Marios Gavrilis for the villainous Emmerich Voss,
Kirche haben Sie das verstanden?
and a healthy amount of Nazi punching, whipping and shovel smacking, and you've got all the ingredients you need.
Aim for something soft.
But it's so much more than just a playable film, instead grounding itself in flexible, immersive sim-esque gameplay systems that emphasise using brain over brawn. Violence is rarely considered a first option, and gained knowledge is always a much sharper weapon. It makes for a truly fantastic game in its own right, but one that is as reverential as it is transformative, and a true-to-life version of what the Indiana Jones character is, a doctor, not a soldier. The Great Circle is as thought out a licensed game based on a movie as you could wish for, and a perfect fit for the top of our list. And those are our picks for the best games based on movies. What game that you love didn't make the cut? Let us know in the comments. And for more licensed games, check out our list of the best Marvel games of all time. And for everything else, stick with IGN.